Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today we will talk about Protist kingdom. Protist kingdom is a very diverse group. We can have microscopic algae, we can have macroscopic algae. We also could have some organisms that look like microscopic animals, but they are considered here Protist or also protozoa. And these kind of glass covered algae called diatoms. Diatoms are so pretty because they are covered on a silica protective layer, which almost looks like glass. They're found in the ocean and they're responsible for creating most of the oxygen that we breathe along with phytoplankton. Let's move on. First, let's have a look into Protist kingdom as a category level. The Protist kingdom is known for many scientists to be like a trinket box because many organisms with many different features could be placed there. There's a kind of a practical joke between biologists that says that if you don't know where to classify an organism because it has many properties from other groups like plant, fungi, or animal, you could probably classify it as a protist. We can have many different organisms grouped here, and it's most likely to be a category that will probably disappear in the near future, just because that different characteristics that are grouped in the same taxa or in the same classification. As always, we are going to use this kind of list so you can make your Cornell's notes, remembering the characteristics of Protist kingdom. Are you ready? Let's get to it. First, let's talk about the structure. Protist kingdom could be unicellular or multicellular. We can have organisms that can't be seen with our naked eye. You need a microscope to see them. Or we can also have macroscopic protists like the algae, right? That you can see, like the seaweed floating and bumping around on the waves of the ocean. These are the two versions of the protist kingdom that we can have, uni and multicellular. Talking about the structure, they are eukaryotic organisms, which means that they have cells with nucleus and real membrane-bounded organisms. In this classification, we can have three groups. The plant-like protists, like the seaweed or the ocean algae, that it is macroscopic and we can see with our naked eye. The animal-like protists, they are called like that because they can swim, hunt, and they have an adaptation that enables them to feed in like a kind of an ingestion way. And finally, a slime mold or fungus-like protists, which are much more likely like fungi than the plant-like protists or animal-like protists. Because its structure is much more complex than bacteria and archaea, they're going to have in their membranes ways to move around. Now we can have movement by cilia that remember there are short hair-like projections that are sticking out of the membrane. They could also be used to create currents and help the food get inside digestive vacuoles. That's why some organisms are known to be like animal-like protists. Others will move by pseudopods, which are membrane projections like resembles to the cell crawling, like amoeba, for example. And others, we have long whip-like projections of the membrane called flagella. These are the considered free life protists or the animal-like protists that look like animals, microscopic animals, but remember they belong to their own group, which is protist kingdom. Talking about the reproductive methods, protist kingdom can have both versions, asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Remember that asexual reproduction produces clones, usually by a process called binary fission, while the sexual reproduction uh, requires an exchange of genetic material, but in this case, an important feature is that they won't produce embryos. Usually, the exchange of the genetic material will be done between cells. Talking about their metabolism, they could have many adaptations. First, they are considered autotrophs, which means that they produce oxygen by means of photosynthesis. Now, Usually, they produce oxygen because they have inside their bodies the organelle called chloroplast. It's a plant, right? Later on, we will make clear the difference why protists are not considered plants. In this group, we can have diatoms, dinoflagellates, and microscopic green algae. Actually, people think that most of the oxygen that we breathe comes from terrestrial plants, but that's not quite true. Most of the oxygen that we breathe comes from ocean protists. Another adaptation could be the heterotrophic way, which means that they feed on others. They could be free life, which are organisms that can hunt and catch their own food, also like a predator. This is why we call them animal-like protists. And also, we have another group of protists that could be called parasites, which could infect organisms and live inside host cells. And don't forget, also, we have decomposers, all the slime mold protists, almost like a fungus or fungi-like protist. Another important characteristic of this group is that they could have bioluminescence, a chemical reaction that happens inside their microscopic bodies. This group, particularly the dinoflagellates, they're called dinoflagellates because they have two long flagella. They can produce this very kind of stunning and mysterious light when water it's moved. Usually, all Protist kingdom is related to water. They are all linked to body waters like lakes, ocean, rivers, or even stagnant water. Protists, along with other organisms like microscopic crustaceans, could form the known as plankton. Plankton usually is divided into the phytoplankton, which are algae-like protists that depends on photosynthesis to produce oxygen, and the zooplankton, which usually feeds on phytoplankton and small bacteria. These two, plankton in general, are very important because they start food chains in oceans and lakes. Now let's talk about the importance of this biological group. Now, if they are green and they have chloroplast, why they aren't considered as plants? Well, that's because in a closer inspection to the structures, these kind of leaves and roots and stems, they're not so. They have a different biochemical and cellular composition. Actually, algae and seaweed don't have an internal structure, a vascular structure to move nutrients from the roots to the leaves. They absorb the nutrients directly from the body surface or the. Now, in these macroscopic seaweeds, we are going to focus our attention in two groups, brown algae and green algae. Another important thing is that some protists could be considered parasites. They produce diseases that could be easily transmitted to humans. For example, malaria. Malaria is produced by a protist that lives inside the salivary glands of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes transmit this parasite. Usually, when a mosquito bites that has the malaria parasite, it's going to pass the protist into the host. Also, the amoeba infections, which we can easily get if we don't have enough hygiene when we are eating. This amoeba could feed on the nutrients that you have in your intestines and could have very strong consequence in the digestive part. Another importance will be in the industry. Some components of these products will be used to create medicine, food supply. For example, some algae are known to have a very high content of protein, and also biotechnology could use them to produce fuels, energy, or even bioremediation, which means neutralizing some pollutes or pollutants in the natural world. Well, this is a very short summary about Protist Kingdom. And remember, if you're interested in this group, don't forget to dig deeper. Goodbye.